Hello everyone. So after watching this series of tutorials, you may be wondering, how can you get your hands on these assets, basically this whole Unity project? Well, good news is I'm just giving this away for free. So anybody that wants it to start off, just send an email to rag29@njit.edu, and that email address is also found on my YouTube channel. And if you send an email there, I could just send you the zipped folder with this project in it, or I could send you a zip folder of just the, just the 3D Pokemon if that's what you want. But I recommend that you take a look at this project. Another thing I could also do is once my website, because right now I'm working on my portfolio website, once that gets up and running, there is a section for tutorials highlighting, some of the tutorials I've done for YouTube, that I've put on YouTube. And there is going to be a section of downloads, similarly to how there is right now, where you could download like review sheets for certain classes, or I believe that's at least how there was that. Currently, like I said, I'm working on a website, so that's a new portfolio website, so that's down. But as soon as that goes back up, I'm going to put all those links back up, so you'll be able to go there. You'll be able to download my review sheets. You'll be able to download some assets for tutorial projects such as this one. But for now, please just do that through email. Also, if you're looking to continue, learning with this, I highly recommend that you don't just, finish up this, my version of the game, but make your own version. Use the assets that I've created, or make your own. I've recommended in past tutorials in this series, you could create new levels. You could create a level selection system. You could create more Pokemon. You could go into Maya, create, texture some Pokemon, bring them into Unity, and add your own Pokemon in. Now, how would you, one little tangent I want to go on is, how would you actually do something like that? Well, if you're going to make a new level, that's pretty simple. Create a terrain, paint some textures onto it, make it a prefab, put it into another scene, and depending on which level the player chooses on the select screen, it's going to depend on which scene you load. So that's pretty straightforward. Adding a new Pokemon in is a little bit tricky, and I'll have to show you that over a few different scenes here. So the first one is choose your Pokemon. So you obviously are going to want to put your Pokemon here. You're going to want to make basically duplicate one of these objects and put your graphic there, and then make it where the camera is going to be able to see all of them, rearrange them a little bit. Also add these scripts to them. And then you're going to have to actually, this is the hard part, or the tedious part, you're going to have to go in and everywhere you see something with those Pokemon, you're going to have to add your own, give him his own tag. Hopefully following these naming conventions or whatever works for you, but just to keep the code consistent. And then everywhere you see one of these switch statements, you're going to have to put your Pokemon in there. So case, if you did Mewtwo, case Mewtwo choice, teamplayer.add Mewtwo. You're also going to have to create the 3D object or 3D model in Maya. You're going to want to take a screenshot or a render of him and make that like I did for these guys for your selection screen. So there's a whole process, but once you see how I did it for these Pokemon, you could make all 150 Pokemon from the original series if you wanted to. Not that I'm recommending that. It would be tedious, and I highly recommend making, I'd say, 2 Pokemon. Make one basic Pokemon and one more detailed or like a legendary Pokemon. Maybe Palkia or maybe Lugia. And if you can make something like that in Maya, use the different tool sets. Try not to stick with your first model. A lot of these models, they may be like the first model that I did for the Pokemon, but they're not the first iteration of that model. For example, Pikachu was very flat. He had a lot larger hip line, and I had showed him to someone for feedback, and all of a sudden they're like, well, that doesn't really look like Pikachu fully because of a few things here, there, and there. I scaled the model, and just with a few tweaks, he's looking a lot more like Pikachu. Dialga was looking very flat after I had first modeled him back in December. Now, using some new techniques I had picked up in Maya, I was able to, model Ho-Oh, Charmeleon, and Dialga much more accurately. So basically what I would say is make some simple Pokemon, or at least one simple Pokemon, make a detailed Pokemon, make a level or two, make a level selection system, and continue to modify this and play around with this. What could you get out of this? So some people may be wondering why you should use something like this and not just go somewhere, like, for example, not just take notes on these videos, or not just, why actually jump into Unity and get your hands dirty? And the answer is very simple. You don't have to use my project to facilitate your learning, but the fact of the matter is Unity is one of those things, and all of game development, that you learn by doing. So the key to learning by doing is that you want to actually choose a project-based approach, working on small-scale projects until you have enough skills to make a large-scale project, and then learning what you need sort of as you go, and making the necessary tweaks as you go. So when I first, made some of my first game projects, sure, finishing them wasn't as satisfying because they weren't as high quality, but as I continued to move forward and continued to build on my skill set, after the first couple of projects got out of the way and I started to learn more, I started to take more classes, and I'm continuing this hands-on approach, then, I started to get a little bit better at the stuff, and I started to recognize different ways to approach different problems. So the reason I highly suggest something like this, one, this game isn't finished. I've pointed out a few times that there are glitches. So if you're an advanced or intermediate Unity programmer, maybe tighten up some of my code, just for your own edification. What could you do better? What glitches can you fix? What can you add to the game? How can you make it a lot better? If you're a beginner, the great thing about this is you don't have to start from scratch. You could look through and you could see these are the actual scene files. You could see exactly how I set this functional game up, and you could follow along with this these tutorials. I tried to make them as intuitive as possible. I'm really walking a fine line here because I don't want to just sit down and make like 100 videos on how I did every little thing in this project. It would pretty much waste my time and your time, because there would be a lot of obscure details, a lot of basics about variables and stuff. It would just be way too comprehensive. So I'm just trying to give you enough information so that it doesn't look like something that's way out of your grasp, but I'm trying to also not give you so much information that you don't have to look into it, or you don't have to, or I'm not just going to sit there and bore you to death. So I'm hoping that I'm walking that fine line for you guys. If you do have any specific questions about how I did something, feel free to leave a comment in the comments section below, and I'd be happy to respond to that. Because I do recognize that, since I wrote since I wrote all of this code, and since so far this game was done by me, if someone else who may have a different coding style picks this up, or a different level of experience, they may be wondering how I did something. Just like if I picked up a project someone else did, it would take me a while to get my head wrapped around it. But the cool thing is, once you do wrap your head around it, and once you start to understand how I did these things, you could easily not only work in this project, but you could transition to your own projects. And really the hope with any tutorial series is that you're going to do the project in the tutorial series, but then you're going to have those skills to transition back when you're doing your own projects. And that's the most important thing. And I could be honest and say that a year and a half ago I was reading some game design books, and I was working through some examples, and I kind of felt like, why not just try to jump into a portfolio piece, and why learn all these skills and everything. And then when I look back, I find myself now, when I'm actually making my full portfolio, why are we doing I find myself thinking like, wow, why was I trying to rush? Because now what I realize is I'm looking back at those techniques that I learned, and having learned those techniques and taken the time to develop those skills, if I didn't take that time and that year or year and a half to really doing small projects, but really growing my skill sets and learning and taking notes in classes and stuff like that, if I didn't take time to develop the skills, my portfolio wouldn't be at all as strong as it is now. So the same applies for anybody. You want to have a good balance between project-based learning and straight-up learning, like taking notes and stuff. But you want to have a period of time there where, while you're doing some of your projects, you're also taking the time to work through little examples and build up those skill sets. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial series, and please check out some of my other tutorial series on YouTube. One of my tutorial series is creating a low poly zombie in Maya. So if you're interested in that texturing and UV unwrapping process, I go over step by step, like literally step by step, how to do that in Maya. I show you, starting from a cube, how I make a full zombie character and texture them. So please watch that one if you're at all interested in that. And the other really big tutorial I have, obviously, is this one. So if you haven't watched all of these videos, and you just happen to stumble across one of these videos, it is a whole tutorial series on how to make this Pokemon Battle video game. And I do provide a lot of Maya tips. In some interlude videos, I show you how to use a tool in Maya. So, really simple, really intuitive. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty as you're working on these projects and really jump deep into the code. So, thanks for watching, and hopefully you'll watch some of my future tutorials.